So I have a confession to make. It's an interesting confession. Maybe it's not a confession at all, and I'm just trying to be sensational. The reality is that using queens and requeening, using bedded stock, that sort of thing, in the treatment-free apiary is actually a treatment. So I've been mulling around this question of requeening and what requeening means to the phrase and term treatment free. And without being exceptionally sensational, which I have a tendency and a proclivity to do, I'm just going to state the obvious that when you requeen or you add a queen, you're engaging in a form of treatment, and you can no longer essentially state that it is a treatment-free colony. Now, that doesn't change anything other than the fact that it hasn't been 100% treatment-free. And if you ask people to wear the badge of 100% in order to claim a treatment-free management practice, I think this rules most people out. These are a bunch of empty boxes from harvesting honey in the apiary. This I affectionately call the airport yard. And in large part, it's because it's in proximity to an airport. So that's a fitting name, but it's also off a major thoroughfare. So I call it by that sometimes too. The only people who know what I'm talking about usually are people that I talk to on a regular basis. So it's next to an airport, and that's why I would call it the airport yard. Anyways, it's put up a lot of honey this year. I'm pretty proud of it, but it is a little bit further away from my other apiaries, which is in large part why it's probably been a little more neglected than the others. But this colony here is an interesting colony, and you can see that it has two tags on it. One says 40, the other says 9. I believe that the queen originated from queen number 40. See? Airport yard. Can't get a word in edgewise. Anyways, the queen originated from number 40, and in the spring there was a couple of queen failures on this stand that the colonies had made it through the winter. So the resulting infestation, when evaluated here, what is that? August 15th, I think I did another sampling on it, and that particular colony was close to 30 mites. I want to say it was like 28 or 29. So the obvious evidence of a doubling mite population, a failed Harbo assay, and an increase in the mite count between a span of a month and a half really tells us that this colony is not resistant or demonstrating anything of resistance capacity. So the question is, what would you do in a treatment-free scenario if you weren't treating your colonies? We're not going to manipulate the colony in any circumstance with treatment or brood break or drone brood culling or brood culling and trapping. Any of those mechanical interventions are considered treatments. So with it being August 18th today, it would be a little late to engage in anything mechanical. Requeening would probably be a little too late for such a high mite load. If the mite load were, I've got a sassy lassie, she would like to take a chunk out of me, I'm sure. Anyways, it's a little late for doing a requeen that would have any manageable effect on bringing that population down. Those reproductive mites are going to need at least 7 weeks with a varroa sensitive queen to reduce that mite load on their own. And we don't really have 7 weeks left here in Michigan for something like that to occur, to prevent the young brood from being fed by parasitized worker bees. So here is our dilemma from a treatment-free approach. Now, my personal position is that if you are going to engage in 100% treatment-free practice and you have an apiary in which you are actively pursuing better genetics and don't want to risk the rest of the colonies in that apiary, the proper thing would be to cull that colony. Now, that's not a popular opinion with some people, and frankly, I don't really care which way or the other. If that's your choice, it's your bees, it's your choice. You could treat them, or you could do a cull. But if you're engaged in 100% treatment-free beekeeping practice, you would need to cull that entire colony, because the other bees in the apiary now become full at risk of robbing that colony out when and if and when it does crash. I'm not going to say it's an inevitable thing that colony would crash. It's a higher likelihood based on what we've seen over the past couple of months of monitoring. So yeah, that colony is going to require treatment, and as a result of the current breeding practice, I will probably deal with that accordingly, and that colony will get a new queen when that treatment's finished. So I'm not 100% treatment free, but I still engage in treatment free practices with the bulk of the remaining colonies that I keep bees. And in this yard, many of them are in circumstances where they probably could use better selection of queens or methods to improve their outcomes. And because of my neglect of the yard, it's probably been a little more tricky to get progress here. But out of 18 colonies in this yard, several of them are scoring really high as far as varroa sensitive hygiene is concerned, independent of me. And I think the moral of the story there is that even in my neglect, if we're not looking for the resistance in a colony, we're not going to be able to identify or find where to breed from. So yeah, without sensationalizing this, I don't think there's a clear-cut way to say you're treating or you're treatment-free. I don't think that there needs to be a divide between the two discussion paradigms. I don't think there has to be animosity between the two approaches. It's really a game of labels in the grand scheme of things. Resistance breeding, selecting for resistance, treatment-free beekeeping. My theory is that treatment-free beekeepers really have the same thing in mind, and I would probably identify with this pretty readily, is that everybody's looking for a better bee, whether it's selected for one thing or the other. And whether you're not selecting or you are selecting. Everything you do as a beekeeper is a form of artificial selection, especially if you're doing it based on, your own preferences. If you want better honey production, you want more mite tolerance, you want survivability or frugality for winter stores in the north, less small hive beetles, anything that's, anecdotal or even subjective, even if it's not going to be successful, but you're choosing to engage your colonies with those certain goals in mind, you're artificially selecting. So we can end the debate, I think, on treatment-free versus treating. We could also end the animosity based on the corpus of evidence that you're going to be mite bombed by your neglectful treatment-free neighbor. There's enough science on that subject that we can dive into on another day, but I won't do it now. Anyways, I'm going to pull a couple more samples out of the colonies back here and wrap this yard up for the season, getting everybody ready for the winter. And anyone who has demonstrated absolute failure based on my goals for them will be selected to have their course changed. All right. Okay, bye.